And Alan. Are you guys ready? I'll go ahead and introduce you if so. All right. So I'm Becky Bolito. I'm the post-secondary counselor at Vernon Hills High School, and we are so thankful to Caren, Naidoff, and Alan Press from Shire Law Group based in Lincolnshire, who are donating their time tonight to educate our families on things you need to know, things that are different when your child turns 18, especially given that a lot of our students end up attending college away from home. It's very timely for senior families, especially. And I will be in the background answering questions in the Q&A, or at least saving them till the end. So we will have time at the end. If you have any questions along the way, throw them in the Q&A and we'll go over them with Caren and Alan at the end. And this session is being recorded, and I will be emailing this out to all Vernon Hills families, and I know Aaron at Libertyville will also be doing the same. So Caren and Alan, it's all yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the introduction. I'm Caren Naidoff.
And I'm Alan Press, and Caren and I are partners at Shire Law Group, right down the street in Lincolnshire. We want to thank Becky and Nicole for helping us get this arranged and for hosting this evening. And we're very excited to bring this presentation to you. We have done this before, and it seems to be very well received. There's lots of really good information. So we hope that you enjoy it and that you get a lot out of it. The presentation takes around 45 minutes or so, and that'll also leave some time at the end for questions as well.
So with that, let's get started. A lot of you joining us this evening have seniors. Some of you have juniors. Some of your children have already turned 18, and some are soon to be 18. So for all of those who have seniors, congratulations on the approach of graduation. Some of your children are going to be graduating, those that are seniors. Some are going to be traveling close to home or maybe further away from home. Some will be heading to college. Some of your children will be starting a new job. And some of your children will be moving maybe into an apartment or into a dorm in the fall. And most likely it's a combination of a few of these things. But there is one thing that we all have in common, and that is once our children turn 18, no matter what direction they're heading in, they are now considered legal adults. And with that designation comes some important changes for them, some important changes for you, and some important changes for your family. So the next slide indicates and shows some of the differences before your child turns 18 and becomes a legal adult, and after your child turns 18 and then has that legal adult status. So before 18, you could access your child's medical records. So if you wanted to find out the vaccine schedule for your child, you could call up the doctor's office and speak with the nurse or the doctor, and you could get a record of their vaccination history. After 18, that right changes. Before 18, you could make decisions about the course of your child's medical treatment. So if your child tripped and fell and was injured, you could call up to the doctor's office and you could discuss with the doctor or the nurse what had happened and decide on the course of treatment. And after 18, that right changes. Before 18, you could speak to your child's doctor. If your child was ill, you could call up the doctor's office and again, speak to the doctor or speak to the nurse and explain what the symptoms were. And together you could come up with a treatment plan, whether it was going to be an antibiotic or what would ensue with that planning. And after 18, that right changes. Before 18, you could help with your child's finances if your child had a bank account. And after 18, that rate changes. Before 18, you could access your child's educational records. And after 18, that becomes limited to some extent as well. What is a parent to do with all these changes that happens once your children turn 18 and become that legal adult? There are 3 essential documents that need to be put in place. We're going to talk about each one this evening. Those are healthcare and financial powers. We're also going to discuss FERPA and the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. That's that act that affects your access to their educational records. And then we are going to discuss some additional common concerns that people have asked us about. Those are wills and trusts and access to digital assets. We're also going to touch on dorm apartment and global insurance, and we'll have a brief discussion on health and safety apps as well. First, we're going to start out with those 3 essential documents regarding healthcare and financial access. Those 3 documents are the healthcare power of attorney or power of attorney for healthcare, the HIPAA authorization, and the power of attorney for property. We're going to take each of these documents one at a time to explore each one. The first one we're going to take a look at is that healthcare power of attorney. A parent cannot make medical decisions on behalf of their adult child, even in an emergency, unless proper authorization has been put in place. And that proper authorization is the healthcare power of attorney. The healthcare power of attorney gives parents or somebody who's designated an ability to make medical decisions on an adult child's behalf if that adult child cannot make their own decisions. So we always get the question, the first question from our young adult clients when they come to sign these forms is, am I giving up any of my own rights? And the answer is absolutely not. They still have the right to make their own medical decisions, but if for some reason they were unable to, that's when that healthcare power of attorney becomes so important, because they are designating who they want to step in and make those decisions for them. So what would happen if there was no healthcare power of attorney in place? Well, you might have to go to court and get a guardianship to be able to make those medical decisions on your adult child's behalf. In the midst of a crisis, this is the last thing that you want or your child wants. It's expensive, it's aggravating, and just by having these documents in place, you're avoiding all of that and also being able to address the situation at hand. One of my very good friends had a child. It was her first one that was going off to school, and she was attending a large university. And my friend was concerned about her getting acclimated and figuring out her way around and meeting people. So she suggested to her daughter that maybe she join a recreational team. And her daughter liked that idea. She played soccer during high school, and she thought it would be a great idea to play at college on a rec team as well. So she joined the team, and she was having a really good time, enjoying herself. And at the end of one practice, she collided with one of her teammates hard, and she ended up at University Health Services, injured with a leg injury. She was away from home for the first time in front of a doctor she didn't know. She didn't understand what was being told to her. She was in a lot of pain. She could not make her own medical decisions. Fortunately, my friend had these documents in place, and they were able to send electronically the power of attorney for healthcare to make a decision on behalf of her child. So in that immediate moment, she was able to grab the power of attorney for healthcare that had already been executed by her daughter and send it where it needed to get sent so she could make decisions on her daughter's behalf. So we always say, when you do these documents, you should always make sure that you have electronic copies. When we do the documents for our young adults, we always have electronic copies for the young adult and for the parents as well. You want to keep these documents in a place that you can access them easily, because when they are needed, you are going to be in a mode that you just want to get to them quickly and send them where they need to go to. The second document that needs to be put in place once your child becomes a legal adult is a HIPAA authorization. HIPAA is the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. Many of you have signed HIPAA authorizations when you go to your doctor's office. This allows healthcare providers to release and share medical information with designated people. It's not a decision-making document. It's all about access to medical information. So HIPAA is going to allow doctors to speak about a student or an adult child's medical condition with whomever is designated by that adult child on their HIPAA authorization. So they can name as many people as they want on that HIPAA authorization. Everybody who's named on there has the authorization to be able to have, for example, a hospital or a doctor speak with them about the child's medical condition. So this becomes crucial if your adult child is admitted to a medical facility and you need to get information about their condition, especially if they are not able to speak with you directly about their condition. Or maybe for some reason or another, they cannot fully relay medical information to you. They don't really understand everything that's going on and you want more information. Again, at a time of crisis, your primary concern is going to be ensuring that your child is taken care of. You do not need or want the potential additional burden of a court proceeding or any legal costs that might accompany that. I have a personal example of how important these HIPAA authorizations are. And this is with my son. I have examples for both my children this evening. Alan doesn't have any examples for his kids, but that's okay. So my oldest was at school and they were, working hard with exams and everything else that was going on. And he was not feeling well. And he called me in the beginning of the week. And I don't know if this will happen with your young adults as well who are going to college, but I said to him, go to University Health Services, get seen. And there was lots of reasons he couldn't. Either he had to study, he had an event to go to, he couldn't get in at a convenient time. And as the week went on, instead of getting treated or seen, he got increasingly more sick. So by the end of the week, he was very ill. And I got a call late one night and he said, I am really sick. I'm going to the emergency room. Don't worry. I have my phone, except for the fact I forgot to bring my charger and there's only one bar left, but my friend is driving me and he'll let you know what's happening. So as I'm waiting to hear and not hearing anything back, of course, you get anxious. And finally, his friend texted me and said, we're at the emergency room. I have no idea what's going on. They won't give me any information because I'm not authorized to receive it. So I called up the nurse's station. I explained that I was his mom, and they said, I'm sorry, we can't even tell you if he was admitted until we have the proper authorization in place. Fortunately, I had the documents very easily accessible to me. I sent immediately that HIPAA authorization. I called back to the nurse's station and they said, okay, now that we have the document in place, we're able to tell you what's going on. So I can attest to the fact that these documents are extremely important. They're easy to put in place, and you need to put them in place ahead of time. When it's too late, and you're going to be barred from getting information that you would have otherwise if this HIPAA authorization was in place.
Thanks, Caren. So Caren talked about the forms that you need for medical care. We have the healthcare power of attorney, and we have the HIPAA authorization. I'm going to change the focus to the power of attorney for property. This is a financial power of attorney. So think of property in the broadest sense of the word. We're not just talking about real property or real estate. We're talking about really anything financial. And again, when your young adult becomes when your young child becomes an adult, I'll get that right. They of course can make their own decisions. Just because you give somebody power of attorney doesn't mean that you're giving up your right to make your own decisions. Your agent under the power of attorney cannot override your own decision-making. But this form becomes very important, especially if the adult child is ever in a position where they are unable to make their own financial decisions. You would want to have this in your arsenal along with those medical documents. So it's going to allow parents or any agent that's named on the form to manage their adult child's finances. It becomes critical, especially if an adult child is injured or is sick or is otherwise unable, either temporarily or permanently, to make their own financial decisions. If a bank account, a car, or any other assets that are titled in the name of the adult child needed to be dealt with during any period where the adult child could not do it themselves, these documents are going to become very important. And as Caren mentioned earlier, if you don't have these forms already and you do need to do something for your adult child by way of finances, your only remedy then at that point would be to go to court to be appointed the guardian of the estate so you could handle those financial matters. By having these simple forms in place, you are going to avoid that. So it's really a great benefit to have these documents. We hope that no family ever needs them for anything. That would be perfect. They can just sit in a drawer. But if they do become relevant, it's going to be a great advantage to have these documents in place. Now, the power of attorney for property is Illinois has its own statutory form, and they also have a statutory form for the power of attorney for healthcare. So you could Google those forms and get them. And if you're, a do-it-yourselfer, you could prepare these forms with your young adult on your own. However, just be careful. They do require, witnessing and notary and, having an attorney to explain it to the young adult and to handle the witnesses and the notaries and to make sure everything is filled out properly is certainly going to be an advantage. But if you are so inclined to do it yourself, you do have that capability. The forms are available online. Again, this form is going to become very important if an adult child is unable to handle their own financial affairs. What types of things could be handled here? Well, maybe dealing with the IRS or the Illinois Department of Revenue or any taxing body, dealing with bank accounts, financial accounts, dealing with the Department of Motor Vehicles. So there's lots of uses for the form. Now, if you have a joint account, let's say with your young adult, you will have the right to do these things for that account just by virtue of it being a joint account. You don't need the power of attorney for property in that situation. So it's important to keep that in mind. For anything that's joint, you won't need this form. But let's say your adult child goes off to their first job or they go off to college, and wherever they're located for that, they decide to open up their own bank account, and maybe you're not going to be on that account. So then, of course, it becomes relevant. And it also, leads to another point that we always tell our clients is that these forms don't expire. So if you do have them prepared when your child turns 18, because they have to be 18 to do them, they're going to be good during their young adult life, like while they're at college or just out of high school. And they're also going to be good thereafter. Really, they don't need to update it or change it until they have a major life change, like they get, married or they have a significant other and they want to change the people that they're naming on the form. That would be a good time to do a new one. Also, we did mention that these forms are statutory. When we do these for our clients, however, there is an ability to add additional powers. So we do add a number of additional powers to the form that are not part of the statutory form. And one example of that is the ability to access digital assets. So we include specific language in the power of attorney for property that we prepare for young adults that allows the agent, which would be you most likely, to access things online, and to do anything having to do with digital assets. Now, that's great, but we also want to caution that as a family, when your young adult is getting ready to leave, you may want to consider creating a password emergency system, right? There's plenty of apps for that, or creating some sort of system where, it's going to be easier for you to access something online for your young adult if you already have a login and password for that, right? So for important accounts or financial accounts, you may want to consider doing that before they leave so you have easier access. If that were to fail, however, or not exist, then you'd have the power of attorney, hopefully, to fall back on. Sometimes people say, well, this is all great, but my son or daughter, they're going to school in Pennsylvania, or they're going to Washington, D.C., or they're going to California. So does it make sense for us to get these forms done here before they leave, or should they, just do it in that state? Well, as long as the forms are properly executed, witnessed, and notarized, they are going to be valid in all 50 states. So because your young adult is probably going to get super busy when they wind up in college, it's probably a good idea that if they turn 18 before they leave, which should be most people graduating from high school and entering college or their first job, then it's probably a good idea to get it done before they go. If not, we sometimes have people come in when they're back at home for a break or a holiday or whatever. You could always arrange that as well. We even have people come in, and it's their parents doing, but they come in on their 18th birthday because their parent is probably nervous about getting these documents done. We can certainly think of much better ways to spend your 18th birthday than sitting in a lawyer's office, but I will say that we make it very fun and enjoyable, and even have a little gift for them. So, but we do get a lot of those situations. But, whether or not your child is going to be in Illinois or they're going to go elsewhere, it's probably a good idea, if possible, to get them done here and to get them done in advance.
Having these documents in place gives you peace of mind in case something happens. It allows you to make immediate decisions, and it's going to give you access to critical information should a crisis occur, so you can just focus on that situation. They're easy to put in place, and when you're making your list of all the things that are important as your child's turning 18, and especially if they're going off, you want to make sure that this is at the top of that list. Again, electronic copies of these documents are really important to have because you can utilize them, and they should be kept in a safe place that's easily accessible so you know exactly where they are so they can be sent quickly if needed. In addition to changes to your access of your child's financial affairs and medical affairs once your child turns 18, there are also changes to your access to their educational records, and that is governed by FERPA, which is known as the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. And the next chart demonstrates what those changes are. So before 18, before your child becomes a legal adult, you can view your child's educational records. And after 18, that right changes without the proper documentation in place. Before 18, you can request a correction to your child's educational records. And after 18, that right changes without the proper authorization in place. Before 18, you can decide who can see your child's educational records. And after 18, again, that right becomes limited without the proper authorization in place. And prior to 18, you can get photocopies of your child's educational records. And after 18, that right may change without the proper authorization in place. So there's a theme here, proper authorization. What is that? That is written consent. And FERPA has a specific authorization form where your child is granting you the written consent to be able to receive from the school that they're going to information related to your child's educational records. And there's a lot of misunderstanding around FERPA. A lot of times it's thought that it's just about giving a parent access to grades. It's far more important than that. It's the educational record. So if your child was at school and they were having a difficult time, and they spoke to an administrator about that, and that administrator was concerned and felt like they needed to reach out to a parent to discuss it further, they would be unable to do that unless there was a FERPA authorization in place. And there has been some tragic stories reported for students who did not have FERPA authorizations in place. It is per school. So if your child has a FERPA authorization because they're going to the University of Illinois, and during the summer they take courses at CLC, they will need a FERPA for CLC as well as for U of I. So it's per school, and that's just something to also keep in mind. Sometimes when your child gets accepted to school and they're going through the records, what they do everything online, there might be a box for them to check off because that school might have its own FERPA form and it changes from year to year. We always do backup FERPA forms for our young adult clients. Those FERPA forms are housed at the registrar's office. So once your child is at school, if you're not sure whether they consented to FERPA, you can always call up the school registrar's office and ask them if they do have a FERPA form and if one was signed by your student. Either way, you always want a backup form in place. It's an important document to have. We also wanted to bring some common concerns to everyone this evening that have often been raised. And Alan's going to start out talking about wills and trusts, and I'm going to follow up with a discussion about dorm, apartment, and global insurance, as well as a discussion on health and safety apps.
Thanks, Caren. So we're going to have a brief discussion about wills and trusts because we always get the question, well, okay, we understand the need for these healthcare directives, the power of attorney for property, and the FERPA form, but does our young adult need to create a will or a trust? So let's explore that a little bit. The powers of attorney and the healthcare directives are one element of estate planning, and wills and trusts are going to be another. So real briefly, let's just talk about what a will is and what a trust is. And it's important to note that the powers of attorney, the healthcare power of attorney, the HIPAA form, the power of attorney for property, these are documents that are only valid during lifetime. They expire after death, right? A will is going to be the exact opposite. It has no effect at all during lifetime. It only becomes effective after somebody passes away. We all kind of know what a will is. We've maybe seen it on TV or watching episodes of Dynasty or something like that, where everybody sits around a table, and after the patriarch passes away, there's a lawyer that sits there and reads the will. That is pretty much a Hollywood construction. Reading of a will is not required. It's not typical usually. So just kind of pointing that out. But a will is going to say who you want to leave your assets to after you pass away. I'm married. My will might say I'm leaving everything to my spouse if she survives me. Otherwise, in equal shares to my children, right? That would be typically what a will might say for somebody in my situation. And then my wife would have a reciprocal will that might say she's leaving everything to me if I survive her, otherwise in equal shares to our children. Let's compare that to a trust. A trust is a document like a will that can handle the disposition of assets after somebody passes away. But unlike a will, a trust is effective immediately upon signing. So a trust is a document that can actually be effective during life. So it can handle things like incapacity. And it's also effective after death, so it can handle the disposition of property after somebody passes away. Trusts are a little bit more advanced because they allow you to be more specific as to how you want your how and when you want your assets to be distributed. Again, this would be the subject of an entirely separate presentation, but we just wanted to give you a little bit of an idea of what these documents are. So that's all great, I'm sure. But the question still is, does my adult child need to get either one of these documents? And of course, the answer is going to be, it depends, right? If they have their own independent wealth at this point, or, they were doing night trading during high school and they have a ton of their own money, then maybe that makes sense to do that. However, there are certain substitutes that will still work, especially if an adult child's assets are fairly modest, right? So some of those might be a joint account, right? If I have a joint account with my son, no matter what my will says, if I pass away, my son gets that account just automatically by virtue of being a joint owner. The same thing is true with beneficiary designations, right? So if I have a life insurance policy and I'm leaving the proceeds at the time of my death directly to my daughter, again, it's not going to matter whether I have a will or a trust or anything else. If the beneficiary is my daughter, that's a contract that I have with the life insurance company that when I die, she's going to get those proceeds. So she would fill out a claim form and probably have to submit my death certificate, and then they would pay her, right? It doesn't matter what my will or trust says. So if your young adult has modest assets and the accounts are set up that way where, maybe they have beneficiaries, or it's a joint account with you or one of their other parent, then you may not have to worry about doing that. So if you have any questions in this regard, you certainly could let us know, and we're happy to give you a more detailed opinion that would fit your adult child's situation. But for many people, it's probably premature to worry about this. Once they finish school and maybe when they get married, definitely when they start a family, that's going to be a great time to think about it, doing estate planning, creating a will or creating a trust, doing something to protect their family. At this point, they're single and they're heading off to school. They don't have a lot of assets in their own name. Probably not going to be that big of a deal.
And it looks like there's a question on the power of attorney for property. So does the power of attorney for property cover any new accounts or property that the child creates or purchases, or does it only cover what they own at the time the POA is created?
That's a great question. Yeah. I think that I'm sorry to interrupt you, Karen.
Go ahead.
I just figured I'd answer it because I'm the one that talked about those. But yeah, the form will handle any future assets as well. So the document itself does not need to list the different assets that it's going to affect. It can actually be used for anything that might come up presently or in the future. It's basically designating an agent to be able to make financial decisions and handle financial accounts going forward. So yes, it will include accounts that are in existence at the time the document is created, but it will also include things that are not acquired until later on. As long as that power of attorney has not been revoked or replaced, it is going to be valid for those assets as well.
All right, let's just see if we have. Can a child sign a healthcare power of attorney in HIPAA when they are still 17 if they are traveling out of town day of the 18th birthday? As long as they're 18, they can sign that HIPAA authorization. Alan's going to talk about remote signings. So he'll touch on that in a moment, but they have to be 18. So if they're out of town when they're 18 and they want to sign remote, we'll talk about that in just a moment. So hold
Right,
that.
but the important point is that they have to be 18 at the time of signing. So
Right.
yeah, if that question is, can you sign when you're 17 and then it won't be effective until you're 18, you can't do that. That form would be ineffective.
Yep. You have to wait till you're 18. But we will talk about, Alan will touch on signing at 18 when you might be out of town. So we'll talk about that in a moment. Or you might be, in a dorm room at U of I. So that happens often too. We're going to touch on a little bit what happens in terms of insurance, because people have asked us this before. So things happen, and you might want to consider looking into insurance for a dorm, apartment, a rental, or global insurance if your child's going to be traveling. And there are some policies that are relatively and surprisingly inexpensive that are standalone insurance policies that you can look into for dorm, apartment, and rental insurance. We don't really promote any one over another one, but there are policies out there. The other thing to do is check with your homeowners, because your homeowners insurance might cover some of these things. The deductible might be high enough on that homeowners that it makes more sense economically to go with a standalone policy, and you have to check what the policies cover. So just something to think about. My second child gives me the example for this particular slide, and that is my daughter, who went to school in the middle of Pennsylvania, a little chilly there. And we had told both of our children that before they left for school, they should make sure that they do not leave their computers alone. Because as you know, their life is on their computers. It's where they do all their work, their notes are on there, their papers are on there, all the information they're getting for classes is on there. So they had known that we had said repeatedly, just make sure that you don't leave it, that you take it with you if you need to move on a spot that you're working at. So my daughter went off to the library on this very cold winter day, and she bundled herself up with her coat and her hat and her backpack with her computer. She goes to her favorite spot in the library. So she's sitting there and she's hungry. So she orders Grubhub. So she heeds the thought that she should not leave her computer in the library in her spot, but she should take it with her. So she took it with her to go get the Grubhub delivery, comes back up, and to her dismay, she realizes that her winter coat has been stolen. So in addition to being very upset that it's the middle of winter and she has no coat, she's also upset because somebody stole her coat. Fortunately, we had dorm, apartment, and rental insurance, and it had coverage for theft. And we were able to have that coat replaced within days. The same coat, we didn't have a receipt for it, but we were able to have her file a police report and mark down what was the item that was stolen, and we got a replacement. So by the end of the week, she had her new coat. And with that one incident, that insurance paid for itself. So just something to think about. If there's something that makes sense to your family, just put it on the list, look into it, and see if it would be something that would be important for you to have in place for your child. We wanted to also bring this to you this evening. This is something that you have at the literal tip of your finger that can be utilized by everyone in your family, not just your young adults who are going off. This is the medical ID app. If you have an Apple phone, you will see on this home screen a white square with a red heart, and that is the medical ID app. If you have a different type of smartphone, you can download a similar health app. And what this app does, it allows first responders to bypass a lock screen, facial recognition or digital, and they can get into whatever information you place in that medical ID app. So this is especially useful if your child has an allergy to a medication or an allergy to a food or some condition that would be important for a first responder or somebody in the medical field to know. So again, we don't really promote whether this is used or not used, but we did want to bring it to your attention because it is a valuable tool if it's something that makes sense for you and your family. And this is, again, not just for your young adult, anybody can also take advantage of what this particular app offers. And then we also wanted to touch on safety apps. People ask us about this, and there is obviously dozens and dozens of safety apps out there. If you Google them, they will come up. But you want to be very careful, obviously, about what apps you're downloading. So you want to make sure you vet them. It's always a good idea to ask a trusted friend what they're using, or your children could ask somebody that's already in college what they feel is useful. And some of the popular ones are ones that you're probably already familiar with, but Five My Friends is a good one. Life 360 is a good one. I know that my daughter liked Follow My Walk, Follow My Uber, Follow My Lyft. So there's a lot of great apps out there. And of course, you want to make sure that your child is comfortable with the use of those apps as well. As Alan says, you don't want to abuse them, or you might be
Right.
taken.
Otherwise, you might be banned. They can always disconnect you right off. So we wanted to touch briefly as well on planning remotely and then our process as well. So we, as I mentioned earlier, this is something that you certainly, these documents are something that you could prepare on your own for sure. We think that's a little bit difficult. So we do offer a program for young adults that are in this situation. We do all four of the major forms, the healthcare power of attorney, the HIPAA authorization, the power of attorney for property, and the FERPA form. We have an online portal where the young adult can enter information, and then we have an appointment either in our office in Lincolnshire or remotely over Zoom, where we review everything with them and then have them sign the documents. And that program costs $300 per young adult. And so we've had a lot of interest in that, and we've been doing this now for many, many years. So it's a great program. But the important thing is whether you do this on your own or you use Shire Law Group or you go somewhere else, you want to get it done, right? Because the important thing to know is that once it's too late, if something were to happen, it's going to be difficult, if not impossible, to get these forms taken care of at that point in time, right? So you want to avoid a crisis. So considering, that price, it's pretty much inexpensive insurance to have to make sure that you've got these documents in place so you can protect your young adult and provide for them anything that they might need in the future if, God forbid, something were to happen. Again, it would be great if you did these documents with your young adult and they went into a drawer and you never had to worry about it or look at it. That would be perfect. But having them is going to give you some peace of mind to know that you've got everything in place that's going to be needed in case something is going to happen where they're going to become important.
One of the other common questions we get is, what happens if my child's going to be studying abroad? So the best thing to do in that case is to contact the program and ask if these documents are going to be accepted, and if they're not going to be accepted, what documents need to be placed in there for your children that are going to be off traveling wherever they might be going. Some of the most important gifts you can do to protect your adult child, as we discussed tonight, is that power of attorney for healthcare. So if your child could not make their own medical decisions, that power of attorney for healthcare designates who can step in and make those decisions for them. That HIPAA authorization, being able to get medical information about what is happening with your child. And also that power of attorney for property, as Alan discussed, if your child needed help with financial affairs. FERPA, the consent form to access educational records when your children are going off to a particular college or university, that should be put in place. A will or a trust, if that's advisable. And then check out insurance. If it's something that you think might be important for you and your family, look into that, as well as the medical ID and safety apps. See what ones work best for your family. You can do some exploring there. But again, as far as the safety apps go, you want to make sure that you vet them before you download any of them. Any questions?
And if you don't have questions this evening, that's fine. Our information is right here on the screen. You could always reach out to us with an email to either Caren or myself. If you want to call the office, the best person to talk to, her name is Chris, and she's at extension 4, and she would be delighted to help you with any questions that you might have as well. But please, our information is there. If you have anything that comes up later, or a question that comes up, please let us know.
Thank you so much, Caren and Alan. You were staying on top of the questions along the way, so I think we may have covered everything for right now. Obviously, questions could arise, so thank you for offering to answer those later. All right, well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening, and Caren and Alan, thanks again.
Thank you for all your coordination. We really appreciate it. Thanks for everybody for joining us this evening.
Take care.